I have a great episode for you today. I have Ryan Johnson, Card Collector 2, coming on the Jeff Wilson Show. We're going to talk about the state of the card market right now. And Ryan has a really good sense of things because, of course, he runs his own card shop in Columbus, Ohio. He also travels around to card shows throughout the country frequently. So he's got his pulse on what's going on with the card market. And he's got some really interesting things to say. His card shop and what he's projecting to do this year, it's going to surprise you. It's going to surprise you the growth that he is seeing right now and expects to continue to see. There's a lot of juicy things that are going to come out of this conversation. We're also going to talk a little bit about content creation and his advice for me with me starting my own card shop. So it's going to be a great conversation. Grab your popcorn, and I'm going to bring in Ryan, Card Collector 2 now, onto the Jeff Wilson Show. Ryan, it is awesome to have you on the show, and I'm glad to see that you are surviving in the wake of this crazy cold front right now. I'm sure Ohio is a little bit chilly at the moment.
Yeah, well, first off, appreciate you having me on here. It's always an honor to get down and sit and chat with you for a little while. But yeah, it is anything but warm up here right now. I'm not a cold person. Somehow growing up in Ohio my whole life, you would think I would have been used to it by now. But yeah, definitely days like today where I wish I was a little bit farther south.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I hear you on that. Atlanta's not quite as bad, but a little beach vacation to Miami sounds like it would be pretty nice right now.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
speaking of hot and cold, I wanted
Yeah.
to open our conversation today by asking you, what is your sense of the card market right now? Obviously you have your own card shop, so you have a
Yeah.
sense of people coming in the shop. You also travel around to a ton of different card shows. What is your sense of things here as we are in the early stages of the new year?
Yeah, it feels like right now the market's, again, I say market like our world. That's probably the best way to put it. Like, um, I think going into the holiday season, like we spent a lot of time looking at our numbers, kind of get an idea of like what the holiday was going to be like, and a lot of the trends we had seen in past years we had saw at the end of 2023 just a little bit more ramped up. It was some of the busiest days we've ever had in our shop ever, like top 5 days all time, were in December of 2023. Just in terms of number of transactions. So I definitely think the market right now, a lot of in and I would say it's similar to what I saw a lot of in 2023, where I think the COVID days of people coming in and just aimlessly picking boxes and ripping and hoping to hit $1 million cars. I don't think that is quite the same as it was during COVID. A lot less gambling. But I still think there's people coming in looking for singles and deals and sub $300 boxes. So yeah, it's been a pretty good. It was a pretty good Q4 in 2023, and we've seen a lot of good things, good signs in early 2024. So yeah, I feel right now the market is healthy and in a good spot.
It's that's a great perspective, first of all, and I love that. So you're talking about doing your planning for this year. I'm curious,
Yeah.
um, do you think this year, like when you get to the end of 2024, do you expect 2024 to be a growth year for your store? Do you expect it to be similar to 2023, so more of a flat year, or do you think it could be a little bit of a down year compared to what you did in 2023?
I think it'll be a growth year. Yeah, I think so. 2023 was a growth year for us. It we were flatter in 2022 because the second half of 2022 was a little bit stagnant for us. And I mean, it was even a little rough in the beginning of 2022, just coming off of the highs of 21. But yeah, 2023 was pretty good, and I would expect more of the same in 2024. But I think we'll be able to beat that. I don't expect it to be 2-3x crazy. But yeah, I think it'll be a pretty solid year. I think what we figured out, especially in the second half of 2023, was, you know, what's working and how do we continue to build on what's working. I think when I had first started out, I was interested in more of um, and we're still kind of the same way, but we wanted one of everything, right? I wanted you to be able to come in and say, "Hey, can I get this?" And while that is still the case, there are some things we know are going to sell. So in the past, I think I was a little bit more risk adverse, where if I thought a product would do really well, I would buy like one case or two cases. And I think that tone has changed for us, where like Bowman Chrome University is the single best product we've ever sold in our shop. It's not even close. We've sold tons of that product. And we went all in on it when it came out. We knew this would sell. We're 15 minutes away from one of the biggest college institutions in the country. So we knew it would be a big deal for us. We're a big college football brand. I love college football cards. So we went all in on it, and it performed really well. So I think that's kind of our mindset going into 2024 is when we believe in something, when we think something will do well, really put a lot more effort and attention behind that, because we saw what it could do in 2023. So I think a full year of that and understanding what we specialize in, what does well, how we get more people in the door, how we appeal to all sorts of different collectors from age and demographic and collecting needs. And um, I think spending a lot more time on the data has allowed us to understand what will make us successful in 24.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear that you're optimistic about 24 being a growth year. And it's also great and probably surprising to a lot of people listening that 2023 was a growth year because you continue to see the headlines of cards dropping in price, particularly high-end cards. Cards are selling in some of these high-end auctions for a lot less money today
Yeah, sure.
than what they were selling for a year ago or 2 years ago, right? And so I think if you just look at some of those headlines, you get the sense of like, oh, the market's continuing to cool off. Sports cards are continuing to fade. Not as many people are collecting. Not as many people are into it anymore. All the prices keep dropping. When I think that there's actually a lot of other signs which indicate the exact opposite.
Yeah.
We just saw the largest attendance ever at the National this last year, the all-time largest attendance ever. You just said that you had a growth year in your card shop, and I can tell you, here at Sports Card Investor, we just set our all-time high record for people subscribing to Market Movers, our data software. By far, 2023 was a huge growth year for Market Movers. Our number of subscribers went up month over month over month, and particularly in Q4, it really started to jump. And so I think there's almost like a couple different things happening. Like I think, first of all, I think you're seeing this big movement, and we've seen this big movement now over the last couple of years from, as you said kind of earlier, like gambling, chasing the big hits, being willing to pay 10 grand for a flawless box, and all that hysteria, because make yourself an overnight millionaire by getting the one of one and go hunt for the LeBron triple logo man or whatever. All of that hysteria, which really fueled a lot of the growth of the market in 2020 and 2021, a lot of that stuff has died down. I think instead you've now seen much more of a shift back to collecting. I think you've seen much more of a shift back to lower price product, and people still willing to buy wax and rip wax, but they want to pay $100 for a hobby box. They don't want to pay $1,000 for a hobby box,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
They want to come into your store and they want to buy Bowman U and, buy a hobby box of Bowman U and feel pretty good about whatever they got out of it, because you're going to get some value return on that because the overall price of it's not that high. So you're not going to get like beat up badly on buying a hobby box of Bowman U the same way that you're going to get beat up on buying a hobby box of National Treasures or, any higher end product. And so I think that's kind of almost a whole shift. And I think when you look at what we have today, I think although prices have fallen and although the high end's dropped off some, and although, some of the fervor around breakers is been lowered and certainly the chasing the big cards, even though a lot of that stuff has died down, I think what we have today is actually a stronger, larger, bigger collector base who in many ways is now starting to reemerge because of the fact that prices are lower and that they can walk into a shop such as yours and actually now feel like they get some pretty good value.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing is I think the value in the lower you mentioned lower, right? And I don't think it's just the value of high-end singles. I think it's a lot of things, right? You mentioned the product, right? Product is cheaper. Bowman Chrome use right around $135 a box, two autos, deep checklist. Brakes are lower, right? Because the boxes are not as expensive as they were during COVID. Like, you know, while one of the complaints I hear a lot on like, especially on social, is like box prices are still too high. I mean, Prism 2020, when it came out, that class was good at the time. I think it's become better now. But those boxes were like $2,000+ now, or were $2,000+ then. Prism is still expensive for sure. It's a $900 hobby box. But again, that has come down. The ability to grade cards and get them back under 2 years has, that's changed dramatically. The price to grade cards has changed dramatically. Cost per breaks, like we definitely run a lot of breaks, and similar to hobby boxes, we don't sell as many $1,000 hobby boxes as we do $100 hobby boxes, and we don't sell as many $1,000 break spots as we do $100 break spots, right? The price of entry has come down a lot on a lot of things, right? Single cards, the cost of grading, the boxes, the breaks, and I think that is definitely led to a lot more involvement in the market rather than, again, like, I'm not saying there are people out there that buy 5, 10, 15, $25,000 cards. We don't live in that world on a daily basis, so it's not something I can speak to as much. But I think with the cheaper price point and entry across the board, it definitely brings a lot more. It's brought a lot more people in.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's exciting. I think maybe we're hitting this kind of equilibrium price now where or point
Sure.
now where the prices are reasonable once again, and parents can bring their kids into the store and they can buy a hobby box and not feel like they're getting destroyed, but instead can actually enjoy it. I obviously, as you know, I'm opening up my own card shop, and I'm excited to talk to learn from you. We'll talk more about that as we go. But if you read the comments, there's obviously the majority of people are excited that I'm opening the card shop and everything like that. But then you have
Yeah.
the people in the comments that say, why in the world would you open up a card shop right now when prices are falling and the entire card market seems to be tumbling down? And I don't see it that way. And I don't think that that's reality. I think reality is this is actually a much better time to open up a card shop right now than it was a couple of years ago,
Yep.
because I can actually have a lot of family friendly product and boxes and cards on the shelf. And I can make it an environment where a dad can bring his kid in and they can buy a hobby box for $80 or $130, and they can open it together and have that experience. And then they can go shop the singles aisles of the store, and they can pick up a lot of really cool cards for $30 and for
Yep.
$50. And those cards might have cost them, $250 2 years ago, and they never would have been able to they never would have been able to come back. And now I think it's going to be an environment where they can come back. They can come on a Saturday, and then 2 or 3 weeks later they can come back again, because it's no more expensive than it would be to go out to the movies or something like that, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing is that your dollar goes so much further in cards now. Like, I was going through a box of stuff I had around here, and I found some mosaic basketball blasters from Zion's rookie year. They had $100 price tag on them, right? It's hard to believe that's 5 years removed since then. But again, I don't know if they were priced that year or the next year. But during the COVID craze, when everything was insane, like, blasters, good premium, nice quality blasters were 150+ dollars. Now you can buy graded cards and jerseys and autos and rookies and hobby boxes, right? There are hobby boxes that are near that price that you couldn't have bought a really nice blaster box of before. So yeah, I think that's the important thing is I feel like the dollar goes so much further in today's market than it did, 3 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a real positive thing overall. What trends have you seen in your shop in terms of what sells today that's a little different than maybe what it would have been a year or two ago? You mentioned Bowman U, and so I,
Yeah.
I imagine that's one you're going to talk about here for sure.
Yeah.
But beyond that, kind of what else? Like, how has the market changed over the last couple of years?
Yeah, so the growth of the NIL changing college football has been huge for the college trading card landscape, and it has definitely been big for us. So Bowman U, Caleb Williams autos, and a lot of Panini product like NT and Flawless. Bowman's Best University, that kind of stuff is has been really big. But I would say probably the biggest growth for us year over year, the biggest trend I see going into 2024 has been really like the non-sport stuff, the Pokemon, the One Piece, and the Disney Lorcana. I think those have been really, really, really big for us. I didn't start out with Pokemon right away when I first opened. I didn't know it, and then we got asked for it a lot, and it slowly became a growth thing for us. Um, and we've always sold a lot of it, especially over the last couple years. But Lorcana has really exceeded my expectations this year. I knew it would be good, but it's been really, really good. And then we got One Piece late in Q4, but One Piece has been really, really popular, and we've sold a lot of that. So I think that's probably one of the bigger things I've noticed is the the growth of non-sport for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's really interesting. We made the decision with our card shop that the when you walk in the front door, the entire front section, right when you walk in, is all TCG and non-sport. And you have to then advance through it to
Yep.
get to all the sports cards. And we decided to do that because I know that, obviously I'm known as a sports card guy. And so I know all of my audience knows about the shop. And so we're going to have a lot of people coming into the shop for sports cards. I want everybody who walks into this shop to realize, oh, we've got a big selection of non-sports cards and TCG as well. So that's why we
Yep.
put that at the front, so it kind of draws their attention to it as they work their way to the back to get the sports card side. But I've heard that experience from a lot of different store owners. I've heard what you just said. I've heard non-sports Pokemon trading card games. I've heard all that stuff is hot. Do you guys do much in terms of like Star Wars, Marvel, and stuff like that, or is it more like trading card games?
We definitely carry it, but it definitely doesn't sell like the trading card games do. Um, you know, Star Wars always seems to sell, especially with like we have a lot of luck with like packing boxes out, like the Chrome Finest, things like that. We seem to have a lot more luck packing those out, but not quite the growth opportunity we've had in those. But again, there's especially in Marvel, there's a few, but just in terms of like some of the Pokemon or the sport releases throughout the year, there's just not quite the same. So offering a plethora of Marvel products is a little bit trickier than it is for football, right? There's so much more available, product on a yearly basis. So maybe one day it'll be a bigger growth category for us, but probably not right now.
Yeah. In terms of sports,
Yeah.
I know you've always been kind of a heavy football shop.
Yep.
Not as much baseball, maybe a little bit of basketball. Have you seen the mix shift in recent years? Obviously,
Mhm.
college sports has come on as you talk about, but in terms of the
Yep.
pro sports, have you seen that mix shift for you recently?
Yeah, for sure. Football will always be our best seller for sure. College football is, we could make that its own section too, and it would probably still be higher than most sports because we move a lot of that. But baseball has definitely grown a ton for us recently. I think the big thing about baseball is again the price of entry, right? You can get in a lot of good quality baseball products for under $200, and that is definitely a sweet spot. So really, the $125 to $200 baseball box is hard to keep in. We sell a lot of it. There's baseball products now you can get for 55 to $100. Your Heritage High numbers, your Allen and Ginners, really appealing to set collectors. But there's also some potential in those. Like Allen and Ginner baseball has, Michael Rubin autos. It has Victor autos. It has Stroud autos. It's got a bunch of different guys in that. So yeah, I think baseball has probably been our biggest growth over the last 12 months, for sure. Basketball has definitely dipped, and uh, I think the tricky part with basketball is because the big basketball cards are so big. Like when Victor has Prism Golds out, those will be huge cards, and that makes the cost of basketball seemingly higher. Um, and it's always been tricky for us to sell $1,000 plus basketball boxes, just considering most baseball is not nearly that expensive. So I would say baseball has been a real big grower for us.
Yeah, well, and that's interesting because I know a couple years ago, when we were talking, baseball wasn't that big of a mix of what you were doing, but
Yep,
the growth in that, and I think that parallels what a lot of folks have seen. I think it's interesting, like baseball is kind of back on top now, and baseball historically has always been on top. It always was the most collected, sport. Obviously, it's got much more lineage than any
yep,
of the other sports do in terms of cards. And then we went through this cycle over the last few years where all of a sudden basketball overtook baseball, and even I think
yep,
football overtook baseball. But now we're seeing, baseball kind of reposition at the top of the heap. And so I think that correlates in part back to the rise of the collector again. I think
sure.
baseball's got that lineage of collecting, and now we're seeing less of the flipping and the gambling on the big boxes, and we're seeing more of the collecting. And I think baseball thrives, and that combined with, as you said, the way that Topps approaches their product mix is they tend to make more affordable products. And I think that that's a good thing right now with where the market is. And I
Yep.
think you're seeing therefore more baseball cards get out there in general because people are gravitating towards those types of boxes.
Yeah, and I also feel like, again, while we're on that topic of the baseball product, I think a lot of the increased sales in baseball is probably in part due to what Topps has done with some of their promotion of said products, like the Brady Chase, the MVP buyback, um, a lot of those different things that Topps has. I mean, the Victor Green chase was cool. I know you were in Texas for that. So, I don't think it can be overstated the value of those promotions, especially from a card shop owner. Being able the Brady auto is big. I know that was a bounty by someone else, but that obviously had a ton of demand for an already good product. And then um, the 101 debut cards from
Mm-hmm.
Debut Chrome, like that added a ton of demand, and that box is only about $135. Then you throw in the buyback to a Topps Chrome product that is historically a popular one. Collectors love the Chrome type products. So yeah, I think those have been really, really big, and I think again, I don't think that can be overstated what that can do to a card. To a card shop, I think those things were really big for us in 2023.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's been great. I'm excited to see that innovation for sure. I remember when I first talked to, when Fanatics, first announced the news that they had bought Tops, and some of the early conversations I had with some of the leaders at Fanatics about their strategy, and this was in the early stages, like well before they got to implement anything. One of the things that one of the Fanatics leaders said was they wanted to make sure that each new release had a purpose and had some uniqueness to it that was going to get people excited, had a chase or something that made it different rather than just releasing all of these sets one after another when
Yeah,
it almost seemed like some of them were a little bit purposeless. And I feel like this year was the first year that we really saw Top start to put that into action. And you just mentioned, I mean, you had obviously the MLB debut patches, you had the Brady cards, you had
yeah,
the Otani Babe Ruth,
yeah,
dual autos and definitive, and in Inception you had the first moment cards where they put the pieces of the
the
base
base. Yep.
that players reached. So it's like very
Yeah.
intentional, but very well thought out things that were going to get people excited. I mean, even a lot of people kind of bagged on the taco fractor thing as being cheesy, but even that, I mean, that got us all talking about it, regardless of
100%.
whether, yeah, regardless of whether, people really cared about winning, Taco Bell for life or not. It still added a chase element, a fun element to talk about to the products. And so I think they're really starting to deliver in that regard. And I think that I as a soon to be card shop owner, that has me really excited. And I imagine as a card shop owner that excites you when you get a new Topps release, but then also know that there's something special and unique to it, and Topps is going to put the marketing behind it to get the word out about that.
100%. Yeah, for sure.
I want to switch gears a little bit and ask about your content, because your card shop obviously is one of the most popular card shops in the country. And part of the reason for that is because you're one of the most popular YouTubers. And obviously you're huge on Instagram and, various platforms, and have built up a really large following. I've noticed recently you've been putting a lot of content out on YouTube. And I don't know if you intentionally picked up your pace, or it's always been that way and you're just showing up in my feed now more than you used to in the past. But like you're putting out a lot of videos, multiple videos a week, and a lot of box openings, a lot of various things. What's kind of changed for you, and what are you trying to do content wise here as we get started with 2024?
Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of the shift in additional content was really the end of, you know, the last 6 weeks of the year. We felt there was a lot of opportunity to create content, especially with like the lack of travel to card shows in December. I mean, it's the busiest month of the year for us. I had a son in, last year, so first time holiday as a dad. So it didn't make as much sense to travel in, the end of the year. So it was really okay. Well, what can we create content on? And we just felt there was a lot of opportunity for it. I think the biggest shift, though, especially Q4 on, or honestly most of 2023, I think we really try to prioritize a lot of like short form video, and I think a lot of the full length content leads to those things. Um, I'm like we're really big believers right now, and I'm sure you would probably echo a lot of the same, like in the short form video, that content is, you can deliver it across platforms. So TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, the content works across multiple platforms. So I think a lot of our strategy has been around, going to a card show, buying deals, turning those into shorts, and producing, you know, 8 to 10 different short form videos that you can post on different days, on different times, on different platforms, leads to a lot of, organic growth. And for us, that's been really really big. So yeah, there was definitely more videos in December. It was a big month for us for sure. But um, yeah, I think a lot of my strategy changed once I had a kid, right? Like, and I'm sure you could talk a lot about what that's like being trying to manage being a dad and a business owner and a content creator. It was a really hard adjustment at first. Like I only went to, I think, 4 shows after he was born. Um, so yeah, trying to kind of balance that and kind of get in the groove of, how do you do all of those things, led us to be a little bit more strategic on producing quality content from home that we can also turn it again short form video, but also maximizing the opportunities when we get them on the road. So yeah, it's few different things all worked up into one.
Well, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, we are, with us opening the card shop here this year. Well, actually, I should this year, like within the next couple of weeks here, we have it's coming up, like it's coming up fast. Um, we've already, as a team, we've already talked about we're going to do less travel this year. We're going to go to less card shows. We will still go to some, and obviously, we're going to have a huge presence at the National, and I'm sure I'll make a Dallas show and a few other card shows at some point this year. But for the most part, it's going to be less than previous years. And we're going to lean into having the store and look for content opportunities that come out of that.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of great content opportunities that can come out of that, right? Like you never know who's going to walk into the shop and what type of interaction there will be, or collection that might walk in that somebody wants to sell, or box that somebody buys and rips, or, whatever that looks like. So we're going to be exploring those opportunities a lot more. And I totally get where you're coming from. Obviously, you've got a new kid, a baby still, and it's, I've got 3 kids. They're a little bit older, but it's a lot to travel. And this
Yeah.
last couple of years, I've been on the road a ton for different card shows. And thankfully I've been able to bring them to some of them, which has been a really
Yeah.
cool experience. But my wife is excited that this year we're going to have the opportunity to do a little bit more content in the store itself, and that I won't have to be gone quite as much. And so, yeah, there's cool opportunity. The short form stuff, completely agree. I've noticed you've been doing a lot of that because you've had some videos go viral and do really well. I've seen some of your pack openings and that kind of stuff that they're popping up in my TikTok feeds and my YouTube short feeds. So you're obviously getting good traction on a lot of the short form stuff. And we see the same thing. And I think, as you said, being able to film the long form content and then use that to then turn into
Yep.
short form, it's an efficient way to do it.
Hmm.
And and I think there's a lot of cool opportunity there.
Yeah, yeah, it's I don't think I can overstate the short form thing. It's something we really, really believe in. And again, if you're going to a show and you can get a long form video, we do a long form video for the show, and then we do a pickups video, and then we can break the short form down, or the long form down, into short form. Just again, it leads to a lot of good opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. You were also, for the last few years, a big part of Card Talk Pod, which was one of the most popular podcasts in the
Yeah.
sports card world. And you guys, I was surprised. It was late, right around the end of the year. I was actually just listening to the episode, and you guys said on the episode, you guys were sunsetting it. It was the last episode, and I was sad to hear it. But you guys also had quite a run with that. What's next? Are you trying to get into continuing to do stuff in the podcasting space? Or are you just going to lean more into the video creation, or where is this going to lead?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's probably something I'll probably ask you one off about and see what you think about it. But um, yeah, I mean, Car Talk was such a big part of my life, my brand. I enjoyed it. Still talk to those guys, every day now. So it's disappointing when it ended, but just think it was the right time and right place. So yeah, I don't know what's next. I've always had ideas in the back of my mind that one day I wanted to do something, similar to what you do. And um, you know, I I haven't missed a day in sports cards, and I can't tell you how long, almost 20 years. Like, it's this is my life. I love the hobby. I love collecting. I love building a business. I love content. I love everything about it. So I would love to be able to sit down and kind of do what you do and talk about my experiences from a business perspective, from a collector perspective, from a flipper or dealer perspective, from a card store owner perspective. I think I have a lot of different insight from different experiences in the hobby. So I'll never say never. I don't think it's priority number one in 2024. I think there's other things that we want to do, that I think are more urgent for us, and we see as a bigger opportunity. But yeah, it's hopefully one day.
Yeah. It's fun to do. It's more of I see it a little bit more as a give back, type thing. I'm never expecting, like, episodes like this interview that we're doing here. Like, I never expect this to perform anywhere near as well as, like, the stuff we do on the Sports Card Investor channel,
Sure.
me going to a card show and buying cards, or doing trades, or top 5 cards, or, of the week, or that kind of stuff. That stuff's always going to do better because it's wider audience appeal, because not everybody really cares that much about kind of hearing about the market or the business side of things, or,
Yeah, sure.
whatever. But I also feel like it's an important message to get out there, because the people who are going to continue to advance the hobby from a technology perspective, from starting new businesses, from starting card shops, the people that are going to grow the infrastructure of the hobby in the future, those people are really interested in hearing an interview like this, because those people want to hear a little bit more about the business side and the behind the scenes, and what it's like to run a card shop, and what are we seeing in the market, and what's hot right now, and where's this whole thing going. And
Sure.
so I found it rewarding to do this and to be able to have conversations with people like yourself and to talk more kind of business side of things, because it's just it's a nice element to put out there. Those who are interested in it will gravitate towards it, and hopefully it provides them with value that then maybe empowers them, better enables them to go and start something successful on their own, which then contributes to the entire growth of the entire ecosystem.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's a good way to look at it. Um, yeah, one day.
Yeah, one day for sure. You got to have the time, and
Yeah,
time's a struggle for me as well. A
yeah,
1,000%, right? So I think if you're gonna do it, you got to be committed to the time that it's going to take to do it. And it's one of those things, and you know this obviously because you've built up a huge audience very successfully. But a lot of new content creators struggle with consistency and
hmm
with being committed to doing it for long enough. Like,
yeah,
some will say, I want to do this podcast or I want to do YouTube, and they'll go at it guns a blazing for 8 weeks, and then it will kind of die down. And the truth is,
yeah,
it's a long-term commitment, because 8 weeks isn't probably going to get you very far. It's years of building audience and repetition, and it takes a lot. And so I think if someone's going to dip into it, they need to be committed to writing that out for quite some time. And so you got to be ready to make that commitment. And if you're not, because of everything else going on in your life, 100%, then that's great, and that's totally fine. But I think being aware of your limitations in that regard are super important.
yep, agreed. And I think that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, a couple more questions, and then we're going to wrap up
Sure.
here. Um, actually, so first of all, I'm gonna ask you, what's next for you this year? Like, what's next for your card shop or your content or whatever it may be? What can people expect to see more of from Ryan here in as 2024 goes on?
Yeah, so I'm about an hour away from a meeting talking about our 2024 goals and plans. So I'll probably know a little bit more of that here soon. I think the big thing for us, something I've struggled with, personally for the last little bit of time, is the time management piece. Um, you know, it COVID changed so much of it. It blew up so quick, and then it was one of those things where it was just okay. What's here and today, and not really looking far enough into the future about where we want to go and what we want to do. And I think really like post national 2023, or right around the time my son was born, we really started to look into planning and kind of what's next and a lot of those things because we had to, right? Just we did 5 states in 5 days last year, being on the road, 8 airplanes in 5 days, and we've done spending challenges and then the national and car shows. You know what it's like, and it was one of those things. A lot of things were just super last minute and not really planning, and it's hard to live life that way. So I think the big thing for us is just really trying to get more concrete answers on where we're going to go, what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. So I would imagine there's a good bit of shows in the future, especially the right ones. Right, there's some really good shows. The national is 2.5 hours from our house this year, so that's really nice. Still working on getting set up at the national. I've never really been able to do that, so hopefully that is something in the future for us because I know that's something we really want to do. And then we have a couple things that we're working on that probably share more on at a later date. I don't want to give too many things away, but there's some things behind the scenes where we're trying to bring to fruition. So hopefully 2024 is the year, but yeah, we've got some cool things coming.
Good. Well, we're excited to follow and see what's next for you for sure. And then my final question for me. So
Yeah.
obviously, I've got my card shop opening here in Atlanta in a few weeks. As a veteran in the card shop ownership space, what is the top piece of advice that you would give to me for me to be able to run this shop successfully?
That is a really good question. I probably have a few quick bullet points. Um, the people around you matter tremendously, for sure, right? You have a good team, you can do really good things. That's been a huge part of our success is the people that run the shop and make a lot of the cool events we have happen. Um, Trade nights matter. Trade nights are a big piece. If you can host those, I would always recommend them. They bring the hobby out, and you never believe how many collectors are so close, and how many people are also willing to travel for them. Great way to elevate the hobby, so we love those. And then trying to think of the right word, cater to kids. The future of the hobby, it's something that's a big piece of our brand, who we are. We run kids specific events, but the hobby is cool. I love buying and selling cards, but it doesn't matter if there's nobody to pass it on to. So really, really big on investing in the future of the hobby, and that starts with kids. So you guys do a ton of great educational content, and are going to have one of the biggest, coolest card shops in the country. So I think using that as a way to, educate the youth and the next generation, and elevate the hobby even more, is a really unique opportunity you guys have. So I'm looking forward to it. But I think those would be a couple of the things that would stand out to me.
Awesome. That's great advice. I appreciate it, Ryan. I
Yeah,
will make sure that we get those things covered. So
of
that means a lot coming from you. I appreciate that advice for sure.
course.
Okay, we're gonna wrap up, but I know obviously I think most of our audience is probably already following you. But for people, maybe for some who maybe aren't, tell them how they can do that, and also how they can find their way to your card shop.
Yeah, so our card shop is about 20 minutes from the Columbus airport. We're about 15 minutes south of the city. We're just in Grove City, Ohio. So if you're ever in Columbus or any really outskirt of the city, we're not far. We're pretty much an hour drive from any outskirt suburb in the city. But anywhere on social is Card Collector too. So it's YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, whatnot. Really anywhere that we sell is Card Collector too.
Awesome, Ryan. Well, I appreciate you joining the show. And of course, for everybody out there, just a reminder, you can watch the full length episodes on our Geoff Wilson Show YouTube. The full video is there, as well as the full episodes are on Shopify, or I should say Spotify and Apple Podcasts every single week as well. So make sure you're subscribed everywhere so we can bring you more great interviews like this one with Ryan. Appreciate it, Ryan. Best of luck this year, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks again for having me, Geoff.